Hi, this is Dave Collimer. Welcome to Module 5. In Module 4, as you recall, we spent a lot of time talking about phrases. Phrases are ever present in writing. They usually are on every sentence that you will read, and they are used to adorn or to help embellish the sentence, make it more interesting. But there's another group of words that does the same thing, but it's not quite the same group of words. Where before we looked at the phrase, in Module 5, we're going to look at the clause. The clause. It will help understanding the clause if we go back and look at the phrase and contrast the two. The phrase, as you recall, is a group of words having neither subject nor verb that adds information to the sentence. So you will not see a subject or a verb inside a phrase. Ever, ever, ever. Okay. For example, on the table, in the room. Those are prepositional phrases. There is no subject and there is no verb there. How about getting ready, performing well? Both of these are the ing form, of the phrase. Again, there is no subject, no verb. And finally, here's the verb form 3, blinded and gone, and it's blinded by the light, gone with the wind. Both of these have neither subject nor verb. They are phrases. All right, now let's move to what a clause is. A clause is a group of words having both a subject and a verb, having both a subject and a verb that adds information to the sentence. Now, let's look at an example. We've got Mary bought new golf clubs. That's a perfectly good clause because it has a subject, Mary. It has a verb, bought. That's all you have to have in order to have a clause. By the way, we could continue it out to say clubs would be the direct object. New and golf would be adjectives describing clubs. I'm going to explain strong in just a minute. Here's another clause. She tried them out this morning, referring back to the golf clubs. Do we have a subject here? We sure do. She. Do we have a verb? Yes, tried. Do we have a direct object? Yes, them. Out this morning would be forms of adverbs. Notice for both of these I have the word strong, okay? Strong means that these clauses could stand by themselves. If I wanted to put a period at the end of each clause, I could just have it stand by itself and it would be a strong clause. It would actually be a sentence. So a strong clause and a sentence are the same thing. If I wanted to combine both of these strong clauses together, I could do it this way. Mary bought new golf clubs and she tried them out this morning. Notice all we did was combine the two clauses, strong clauses, and join them with the conjunction and. We actually have a double sentence here, or a compound sentence, made up of one strong clause and another strong clause. Let's look at another example. Fred met Mary. Let's take a look. Do we have a subject? Yes, Fred. The verb? Yes, met. That's all we have to have in order to have a clause. We happen to have a direct object here, Mary. We have a strong clause. In other words, this group of words could stand as a sentence if we just put a period at the end. They went to the movies. Again, another strong clause. Let's analyze it. Do we have a subject? Yes, they. Do we have a verb? went to the movies obviously is a prepositional phrase. This is also a strong clause. It could stand by itself. All right. So once more, if I wanted to, I could join them together in a compound sentence. Fred met Mary and they went to the movies. All right. Now, if there's a strong clause, there is probably a what? A weak clause. And we're going to take a look at that right now. Let's look at this group of words. After Mary finished breakfast. Well, first of all, is it a clause? Let's see. Do we have a subject? Yes, Mary. Do we have a verb? Yes, finished. That alone makes this a clause. But can it stand by itself? Not really. Because after Mary finished breakfast kind of leaves us hanging like on the edge of a cliff. What happens next? We don't know. This just leads us along but doesn't fulfill the purpose of a sentence. This we call a weak clause. It cannot stand by itself as a sentence. Let's look at this group of words. She went to play golf, referring back to the previous group of words. Here we have a strong sentence. We have a subject, we have a verb, and we have a sort of collective direct object here. Can this group of words stand by itself? Yes, it can. If we put a period at the end, we would have not only a strong clause, but a sentence that could stand by itself. Now, is there a way that we can combine the weak clause and the strong clause together? Yes, there is. After Mary finished breakfast, she went to play golf. This kind of sentence is very, very common, where you have a weak clause joined to a strong clause. Let's take a look at another example. When Mary hits a golf ball, you can sort of feel that you're on the edge of a cliff, right? Well, what happens next? They kind of leave you hanging there. That's a good sign of a weak clause. But this next group of words, it goes straight every time, referring back to the golf ball, we have a strong clause. It goes straight every time. Could we combine this weak clause with a strong clause and make a sentence? Let's take a look. When Mary hits a golf ball, it goes straight every time. This is a wonderful sentence. There's a lot of information, and we have put it together by having a weak clause joined to a strong clause. Let's take a look at a slightly different example here. She was playing soccer. That's a strong clause. We have a subject, she, was playing. We have a two-part verb. We even have a direct object. That's a nice strong clause. Now we have when Fred saw Mary. Is that a strong clause? I don't think so, because it kind of leaves you on the edge of a cliff again. When Fred saw Mary, what happened? We don't know. That's weak. Weak clause. How about this? Before it began to rain. Does that sound like a strong clause? No, it doesn't. First of all, is it a clause? Do we have a subject? It. Do we have a verb? Began. We happen to have a direct object, to rain. So, it is a clause, but as you can tell, it leaves you on the edge of a cliff, therefore it is a weak clause. With these three groups of words, we have one strong clause and two weak clauses. Do you think we can join them together into a longer sentence? Let's take a look. When Fred saw Mary, before it began to rain, she was playing soccer. Perfectly good sentence. And a lot of information. Okay, what did we do here? We took two weak clauses and joined them to a strong clause. Let's review again what a strong clause is. It is a group of words having a subject and a verb and expressing a complete thought. Doesn't leave you on the cliff. It expresses a complete thought. Let's look at the definition of a sentence, which ironically we haven't done yet in the course. A sentence is a group of words having a subject and a verb and expressing a complete thought. Didn't I just say that? Didn't I just say that exactly the same thing up here as I did here? Yes, these definitions are exactly the same. So guess what? A strong clause is a sentence, and a sentence is a strong clause. They're the same. If you don't believe me, look at the math. Strong clause equals sentence. Sentence equals strong clause. Getting back to a weak clause, a weak clause is never a sentence. A weak clause can never be a sentence. Why is that? They both have a subject, they both have a verb, but a weak clause never has a complete thought. A sentence does. A weak clause never has a complete thought. A sentence does. A weak clause can join a strong clause to make a sentence that's longer and more interesting. This is what you see in good writing, and this is what you should develop in your own writing. Joining one or more weak clauses to a strong clause. Let's look at how that would work. Again, when Mary saw Fred in the restaurant, weak. How do we know it's weak? Because you're on the edge of a cliff. You don't know what's going on, right? What happens next? We don't know. But then this other group of words, she stopped to say hello. That's a strong clause. Let's combine the weak clause with a strong clause. When Mary saw Fred in the restaurant, she stopped to say hello. The weak clause came first, followed by the strong clause. Notice there's often a comma between the weak clause and the strong clause. Joining a weak clause and a strong clause makes a complex sentence. That's the definition that's good to know. A complex sentence is a weak clause joined to a strong clause. It could be one weak clause or it could be two or three weak clauses all joined to a strong clause. We have a complex sentence. Good writing is full of complex sentences. When you look at good writing, whether it be in a novel, a magazine article, a newspaper, an essay, it doesn't matter where, good writing will have a variety of complex sentences made up of, again, weak clauses joined to strong clauses. You probably recall that back in Module 4, when we spoke about phrases, that we said that phrases can act as nouns, adjectives, and adverbs. Well, guess what? Soken clauses. Weak clauses in a complex sentence can function as nouns, adjectives, and adverbs. Let's take a look at what we mean here. By the way, a weak clause often begins with the word what, that, which, where, who, whose, or whom. So you can kind of spot it if you see this word at the beginning of a weak clause. Let's take a look at an example. Let's look at the weak clause acting as a subject of a sentence. What Mary planned turned out fine. Well, what's the subject of the sentence? It's what Mary planned. That whole group of words is the subject of a sentence. But it's not a phrase, it's a clause, because it has a subject, Mary, and a verb, planned. It's a weak clause because it doesn't finish a complete thought. It's a weak clause. But together with this group of words, it forms a nice sentence, and it acts as a subject of the sentence. We don't know what Mary planned, but that's beside the point. We could also look at this example. That Mary is talented is obvious. What's the subject of the sentence? This clause. A weak clause. It's got a subject, it's got a verb. But joining together is obvious. We have made this the subject of the sentence. Is the verb. Obvious is an adjective describing Mary, or the fact that she's talented. That freedom is precious is a great idea. Here we're using an idea as a subject. We haven't done that very often. We're using Mary and her balls a lot in this course. But here, that freedom is precious is a great idea. What's the subject? The whole clause is the subject. What's the subject within the clause? Freedom. Verb is. So it qualifies as a clause. Acting as a subject of the complete sentence is as the verb. Great idea is a subject equivalent of freedom. How about this? Whatever you choose is okay with me. You've probably said something like that before. Whatever you want to do is okay with me, right? Well, guess what the subject is? Whatever you choose. How do we know it's a clause? It has a subject and a verb. How do we know it's a weak clause? Because it leaves us hanging. But in this sentence, it acts as a subject. Is the verb. Okay with me is subject equivalent. One more. Whoever drives the ball farthest wins the prize. Here we're talking about a golf ball. Okay, what's the subject? Whoever drives the ball farthest. It's a weak clause acting as a subject. What's the verb? Wins. Prize is direct object. Well, a clause can not only act as a subject in a sentence, it can also act as an adjective. Here we have a weak clause acting as an adjective in a sentence. Let's look at the sentence. The course where Mary played has closed down. We're referring to a golf course here. So here's our clause. How do we know it's a clause? As a subject and a verb. Remember, phrases have no subject and no verb. So we know this is a clause. What is it doing in the sentence? It's referring to course. It's telling something about course. That makes it an adjective. Because course is the subject of the sentence, has is the verb, closed down, actually has closed is the verb, down is an adverb. So where Mary played becomes an adjective describing course. How about this? The golf drive that she hit was amazing. All right, here's our clause. How do we know it's a clause? We have a subject and a verb. Okay. So what is it doing in the sentence? It's describing drive, which happens to be the subject of the sentence. Golf is an adjective describing drive. The verb of the sentence was. Amazing is another adjective describing drive. So we have two adjectives. This clause describes drive, and amazing also describes drive. The book that Fred gave Mary is about golf. Gee, that's surprising. Okay. What's the subject of the sentence? Book. Verb is. About golf is a prepositional phrase, because about is a preposition. So what about this little group of words here, Fred gave Mary? It's a clause. Fred is the subject of the clause, gave is the verb. What is the clause doing in the sentence? It's describing book. That makes it an adjective. Mary, whom I once dated, is a smart woman. Okay, subject of the sentence is Mary. Verb is. Smart woman is a subject equivalent of Mary. So what is this group of words doing? Again, it's a phrase. I is the subject, dated is the verb, makes it a phrase. What's it doing? It's referring to Mary, telling something about Mary. It's an adjective. Let's move on to a weak clause used as a subject equivalent. Mary is an athlete who likes golf. Let's look at the sentence here. Mary is the subject of the sentence. Is the verb. So here we have a subject equivalent. Athlete who likes golf refers back to Mary. How do we know that this is a clause? Because it has athlete as a subject, likes as a verb. So we have a subject equivalent of Mary. It's like saying Mary is the captain of the team. Similar idea. How about this sentence? That was what Mary needed to work on. Now we don't know what that is, but that doesn't matter. It's not important at this point. At this point, we just have to know in the larger sentence here, is there a subject? Yes, that is the subject. Is there a verb? Was. So what does what Mary needed to work on? That whole clause becomes a subject equivalent referring back to that. Okay. How about a weak clause used as an adjective describing a subject equivalent? Mary is an athlete who loves to play golf. Let's look at the big sentence first. Mary is the subject, is the verb, and athlete is the subject equivalent of Mary. But who loves to play golf is an adjective describing athlete. So this is a weak clause describing a subject equivalent. How do we know this is a clause, by the way? Because who is the subject and loves is the verb. Mary is a player whose skill is unmatched. That's a perfectly good sentence. Let's analyze it. Mary is the subject, is the verb, player is the subject equivalent. What the heck are these words doing there? Well, it's a clause describing player. So it's an adjective clause. How do we know it's a clause? Because whose is the subject. Skill is the subject, is the verb. Whose describes skill. So whose is an adjective. So it is a clause and it's describing player. How about this sentence? These are the balls that Mary bought. Referring probably to golf balls. Let's see. Do we have a subject in the sentence? Yes, we do. These. Are is the verb. Balls refers back to these. Balls is subject equivalent. That Mary bought is a clause referring to balls. It's an adjective clause. Mary is an athlete whom we can admire. Subject, verb, athlete is subject equivalent. This weak clause is an adjective describing athlete, the subject equivalent. Okay. How about a weak clause as the direct object? You see how versatile both phrases and clauses are. Phrases and clauses are very similar, but they're different entities, different things. And we're looking at clauses right now. Remember, a clause must have a subject and a verb inside of it. Let's look at this sentence. Do you remember when Mary won the tournament? Okay. Let's look at the larger sentence first. Is there a subject? Yes, you. Is there a verb? Yes, do remember. It's a two-part verb. So, when Mary won the tournament, guess what? That's the direct object. It is the direct object of remember. Let's take another look at another example of a clause as a direct object. Do you know what the score is? You probably asked a friend this at a football game or a baseball game. Look at the longer sentence. Subject is you. Verb is do know, two-part verb. This is the direct object, what the score is. How about this? Mary remembered that the tea time was 9 a.m. Mary is the subject. Remembered is the verb. This whole group of this clause here is the direct object. Again, how do we know this is a clause? It has a subject, tea time, and a verb, was. Mary recalls what Bob did. Mary's the subject, recalls a verb. What Bob did is a clause acting as a direct object. I think we have one more here. Do you know that Bob and Mary are friends? Subject, you. Verb, do know. And this long group of words here, which is a clause, is acting as the direct object of the verb know. We're now going to look at a weak clause describing a direct object. In other words, acting as an adjective. Mary found the ball that was behind the tree. Sounds like she hit a golf ball and that's where it went. So let's look at the whole sentence. Mary is the subject, found is the verb, ball is the direct object. So what is this clause doing? It's an adjective describing ball, describing the direct object. Bob likes Mary, who is the best golfer. Bob is a subject, likes is a verb, Mary is a direct object, and again, this clause acts as an adjective describing Mary. Mary thanked the professional who helped her play golf, I think is what the idea is here. Mary is the subject, thanked is a verb, the professional is the direct object. Who helped her is an adjective, remember, a weak clause adjective describing professional. Let's look at weak clauses as adverbs. As you recall, when we went over phrases, they were used quite a bit as adverbs, and you'll find the same thing here in clauses. Mary plays whenever the sun shines. She's a fanatic. She'll go out and play golf any day of the week. Let's take a look. Mary is the subject. Plays is the verb. Whenever the sun shines is an adverb describing when she plays. When she plays. Mary plays wherever the course is difficult. Subject, verb, and this whole clause here tells where Mary plays. It's an adverb describing plays. Mary plays because she likes the challenge. Subject, verb, and this whole clause here is an adverb telling why Mary plays. Mary plays well because she analyzes every shot. Subject, verb. Here we have an adverb already describing well, but here, because she analyzes every shot, and for some reason that didn't get underlined, that whole clause is an adverb describing how she plays. Mary plays as frequently as she can. Again, as frequently as she can is the clause, the weak clause. It's an adverb describing plays, and it tells how much. You remember in the first module when we went over the basics of a sentence, we said that there's a prepositional phrase and that the last word in the phrase is the object of the preposition. Like if I say in the room, room is the object of the preposition in. So guess what? We can have a weak clause as the object of the preposition. Mary will play with whoever is at the tennis court. Well, let's take a look at this. Mary's the subject, will play is the verb, with is the preposition, and whoever is at the tennis court is the weak clause. And in this case, it's not describing anything, but it's simply the object of the preposition with. How about this one? Fred told Mary about what he saw on the tennis court. Fred is the subject, told is a verb, Mary is the direct object, about is a preposition. So all of this, what she saw on the tennis court, is the object of the preposition about. How about this one? Mary had fond memories of when she first learned to play tennis. Subject Mary, had is a verb, memories is the direct object, of is a preposition, and then everything that follows is a clause acting as the object of the preposition of. And how about weak clauses as adjectives of the object of the preposition? And this is the last item that we will go over in this module. Bob felt bad for Mary, actually should be badly, for Mary, whose golf ball got lost. Okay. Bob is a subject, felt is a verb, badly would be the adverb here about felt. For is the preposition, Mary is the object of the preposition. So for Mary is the prepositional phrase. Whose golf ball got lost is a weak clause describing Mary, who is the object of the preposition for. Are you following? Okay. If you go step by step, you can figure this out. Let's try another one. The tea time was at 9 a.m., which was good for Mary. Well, subject is tea time, verb is was, at 9 a.m. is a prepositional phrase. Which was good for Mary refers back to 9 a.m., which is the object of the preposition at. I think this is our last example. Mary was on the first tee when play began. Mary's the subject, was is the verb. On the first tee is the prepositional phrase. That makes tee the object of the preposition. When play began refers back to tee. It describes where when play began refers back to tee. Okay, very good, which is the object of the preposition on. So that brings us to the end of Module 5. Our topic has been the clause, which, as you remember, can be a strong clause or a weak clause. Weak clauses cannot stand by themselves. Strong clauses can. In good writing, you'll see a combination of strong clauses with weak clauses. By the way, in very good sentences, you will find phrases and clauses used very frequently. They make sentences much more interesting than they otherwise would. In our next module, Module 6, we're going to move on to some examples of writing by very good writers, and we're going to analyze their grammar and see that what looks impenetrable sometimes, or even imponderable, or not understandable, or brilliant, can actually be understood if we look at the grammar involved. And we will be looking at Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who was a poet in the 1800s. We'll be looking at one of Shakespeare's plays. We'll be looking at the Gettysburg Address, and we'll be looking at a scientific paper written by Mr. Einstein. See you there.